So nice to see some of the familiar names. I remember Surabhi, Sagar, uh, who else? I remember Ushna was there, Dula, Devaki Preeti. Welcome back. Uh, Before we begin, I'm just going to go over some Zoom etiquette before I introduce Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu. So, for those of you who feel comfortable to turn on your videos, please do so. You can keep yourselves on mute. This will allow for a much more interactive session. And if we notice the session is lagging for any chance, then we'll let you know. Anyways, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu, thank you so much for joining us again this week. We're so grateful to have you again. As most of you already know, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu is a disciple of Bhakti Tirtha Swami. He is a graduate from the London School of Economics, where he studied politics and philosophy. And then he further went on to get a master's from Birkbeck University, London. He currently works as a leadership consultant in the United Kingdom. So other than that, we'll also be posting an anonymous question form in the chat, so you can send in your questions, and that way we can communicate them to Prabhu. So yeah, please use the raise hand function, and I'm sure Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu will get into all the ways we can interact through Zoom. So Hare Krishna, over to you, Prabhu.
Thank you very much. Okay, so it's great to see you guys again. So thank you for joining. So I'm going to share some slides. I'm just going to speak a little bit about the thinking behind this follow-up session, and also why I'm really excited to connect with you on this particular call. But before we do this, we're going to just say some prayers quickly, just to get the mercy of the previous acharyas, and then we can go forward from there. So, Om Gyana Timaranda Siya Gyananjana Shilakaya. Chakshu Militam Yanatasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam. Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Gada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam. Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam. Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita. Shri Vishakamvitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari. Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vanchakapatrubhyas cha kripa sindhu bhyevacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we want to start by sharing our slides, and we want to do a couple of things on this session. So we may touch upon some of the things that we discussed, but really, and this is the essential point, this session is to be interactive. The whole idea of this session is that as we start to come together, as we start to reflect on the material, as we start to share our insights, ideas, feedback that we received, we're going to be literally, for the duration of this session, literally empowering one another. We mentioned in our previous presentation that we all have the super soul within the heart. The whole idea here is that super soul is carrying a message, or messages. Some messages are within the heart and they are for us, but there'll be some messages that you're carrying within you which are meant for other people on this call, okay? And the other purpose why we're doing this is because we want to really kill a certain habit within our tradition or within our communities. The habit that we have within our communities is this slide, the normal approach to hearing a class, where we hear it and then everyone goes home. And what we're really trying to do is take a slightly different approach. we're really trying to go into this culture of follow-up and discussion. And I'm going to start here because this whole thing is going to be interactive. Okay? And there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is explaining that those who share this supreme secret with my devotees, what does he say? He says, such people are what? Those who share this supreme secret with my devotees. Put it in the chat window. What is it that Krishna is saying about those people? Exactly. Thank you, Surabi. They're most dear to him. So we really want to engage each other in the process of Krishna consciousness, in the process of helping us to empower and develop one another. I also do this, and I'll be very honest or transparent. I also do this so this becomes a habit with all of us. There are many people in spiritual life who wonder what's happening. And their consideration is, I've been to the classes, I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, but I don't feel I'm growing so much. This is often the missing factor. The missing factor is 4 stages. The first stage is hearing. We usually get that correct, right? So we usually hear the class. Okay. The second stage is manana, which means we're meant to reflect on what we've heard. And we're going to be doing a lot of that on this call. The third stage is nididhyasana, right? So these 2 stages, reflection or contemplation, and then nididhyasana, we generally don't do very much of. Now, there's also a 4th stage, which I believe comes in a commentary by Baladev Vidyabhushan. The 4th stage is vandanam. So the 4th stage is prayer, where we are depending upon grace in order for the things that we've heard, hopefully thought about, hopefully applied, to become part of our consciousness. Okay, so I'm really excited to be on this call because, to be honest, I'm going to be learning more from you than you are going to be learning from me. Okay, what we want to do on this call is really get you engaged. So my own mentor, he would often explain that we tend to remember about 70% of what we discuss, 80% of what we experience, and 90 to 95% of what we teach. So the best way to learn anything, and I repeat, the best way to learn anything is literally to be involved in the process of teaching it. Okay? And for this point, I'm going to pause. And I don't want you to put it in the chat window, but what I'd like to do, I'd like to get some hands up as to why that's the case. Okay, let's start as we mean to go along. So we're going to unmute you or you're going to unmute yourself whenever you have something to share. But we want to really get into a dynamic discussion about this material so it goes a lot deeper into our consciousness. Why is the best way to learn anything to teach it? I'd like someone to raise their hand, and then I'm just going to call upon people, and then we'll go forward from there. Okay, so I'm just scanning everyone who's on the call, just to see if I can see some hands raised. And I'm going to ask also, Ananda Madhav, actually, you can help me out because you may have a better vision, and you may be able to see certain people that I can't see so quickly. And if anyone's got a hand up, you can, Shameshri Priya, is it Shameshri Prema? Is that correct?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so when I say hands up, you can even use the electronic hand or you can raise your normal hand.
I know, I can't find it.
Okay, no worries. So Shameshri, please break it down for me. Why?
What I found is that, like, when I need to teach, I have to prepare so much that I'm like going for different sources. I'm like rehearsing it for myself. So I'm literally teaching myself. And so all these processes are involved. Like, first I'm hearing from other people, either through reading or through actual lectures, who have the knowledge. Then I'm reflecting on what I've been able to retain, how it applies to my own life, so I can personalize it. And then Surya was saying that the 3rd stage is applying it to your life. So I have to reflect on whether I'm applying it to my life and how to show others how to apply it to their lives. And then finally, I pray to Gurudev that I might actually be able to properly convey the message. So I feel like I'm so much more involved and so much more hands-on when I'm teaching rather than just like this passive, listening.
That's wonderful. That's a great start. And I just want to dig into this because, again, I'm learning as much as everyone else. So when you've been doing that Shameshwari Prema, what have you found to be the tangible results? So when you've, for however long you've been doing this approach, you've been thinking about it, trying to understand it, looking at whether you're applying it or not, you've been praying to convey it properly. What have you found to be the difference when you take that kind of approach? If you just unpause and share that, please.
When I take that approach, I find that people are much more effective, like on a heart level. Mm-hmm. And I've seen like when I haven't prepared in that way versus when I have, and it's kind of like, and I'm already kind of like an ambiguous sort of person, so it's just very fluffy if I don't take those 4 steps. Mm-hmm. But if I do take those 4 steps, it's just like potent, it's like direct, like people really like are able to receive it and feel like it's been properly constructed, the message.
Fantastic. And I loved what you said about people are much more affected on the heart level. I really resonate with that, because when they're affected on the heart level, then you really start to see some transformation. I think that's a great sharing. I know that, was there someone else who wanted to make a comment? Yes. I can see.
Yes, there was Devaki, PT, and Sagar, and Amit, I believe.
Okay, so let's start with David Key, then we'll go to the other 2. David Key, what's your comment on this, please? Or what's your experience?
So, I really appreciated what Shameshwari Prema said, but I was just seeing for myself that you have to go you have to go deeper than the artificial level if you're teaching something. And I find sometimes if I'm just reading, you know, you can just stay on the artificial level where you're just looking at the pages and you're like, oh yeah, whatever. But when you have to teach it, and also you will expect that they will ask you a question, you want to be able to have some deep understanding so that you're not just like, oh, actually, I have no idea. Like, I can't help you. And I've seen too that it also humbles you because you see how like basic things that you may have grown up with that you don't actually understand. You have to study and you're like, oh, this is what I've been hearing, but now I see it. So I feel like it's also very humbling because you realize how little you actually know. And by studying it, hopefully you get a little better grasp of that so that you can try to present it in a way that can touch someone else.
Fantastic. Again, this is very much resonating with me. This idea that you're going to get questions. That's always in the back of my mind. If I'm learning something, if I don't understand it from different angles of vision, someone can ask a question that's from a different angle to the way that I normally understand it. If it's one-dimensional, and then you're just stuck. And it's just like, I have no idea. But you know what's also interesting about what you both said? And I'm gonna throw this out before I come to Saga. I'll just ask this before I get to Saga, because I want to hear your comments, Saga, very much. The question to you is, how many of you have found that when you've really got into the subject matter, you feel more confident in your ability to share that? How many, raise your hands if you've seen that in your own life, that when you really got into it, you were much more confident? Okay, so Dipta, I just want to draw you in. So what difference does that make when you're able to share something and you're able to share, you know your stuff, right? You've got it, you've gone through it, you're comprehensive. When you're able to convey it with confidence, what difference does that make, Sudipta?
I guess it breaks away my fear, because like the fear that I would have before, like if I did not have any knowledge about the matter that I'm teaching, then my confidence does not come. But when I know the material very well, then I find myself like really engaged in what I'm saying, and I see that progressively, the more that I explain, the more confident that I become.
Wonderful. I've been exploring these debates on the existence of God, and it's incredible because unfortunately in many cases the atheists come off more convincing, but what they're saying in many cases is not a good argument, but they're so convinced, and I'm watching and I can't help thinking that the audience, they're not going to be swayed as much by the content as by that kind of like cavalier attitude, like that's rubbish, I know better. You see what I'm trying to say? So I think that there's a huge amount of, I think we do Prabhupada's teaching a disservice when we don't know it properly. Because we don't know it properly, we're kind of shady, we're kind of a bit fragile, a little bit, I'm not sure. And then we go into the arena, and therefore people can pick up, and I'm sure you've seen this, people can pick up unconsciously when you're not sure about something. They can pick up because your body language, the tone of voice, even the way you speak, it all conveys not fully sure about this. But then you've got other people, and this is, I was watching this documentary, and it's about people in the self-help industry, fake gurus, right? And they're con artists, and they'll sell all these courses, and they'll have this kind of whole, they'll kind of show their cars, like, you know, jet set lifestyle, you know, I'm earning 5 figures a month, all that kind of stuff. But it's the confidence with which they convey the message that often tricks people. You see, they don't have much substance, but they're able to overpower people. And then you've got the opposite. Often people who are really spiritual, but they haven't, as you said, this is why I think this is so valuable. If we don't really get into it, then we can't convey it with confidence. And people may start to doubt what we're actually sharing, even though it's correct. So thank you very much for that, Sudipta. Saga, you had a comment. Please join the conversation and share what you wanted to share.
Okay, well, thank you for taking the opportunity to be with us again. I think, I mean, as others were speaking, this whole sort of active teaching. So personally speaking, I don't really have a form of, let's say, sitting down and kind of just going over what I'm going to say, but it's just conversation with my friends and family, and it's just like my own personal realizations. But I believe, at least that's what I feel, that when I kind of take it in outside of my mind, when it's very much external, it's a whole different experience. It almost feels like, hey, I had this diamond. Like, it's just, we become so conversant and so, familiar that we don't even realize it's something important. But when that goes out and I see other people, getting inspired and, getting inspired in their own spiritual life that way, and they might, let's say, not even be from, traditional, let's say, Krishna consciousness, some other faith, and they're like, hey, just whatever you're sharing, I just feel inspired to pick up my own spiritual practice. I think that has like a dual effect on my, I'm like, okay, wow, this is actually amazing stuff. This is so much truth in it, so much beauty. And, I feel more inspired personally to take it up, even with that passive hearing, taking it out of my mind. And in doing so, it inspires others as well. So yeah, that's something that I keep doing.
And Sagan, I just want to pick up on that because I think that's really, really significant. Because you're talking about how when you share something and you see other people inspired by what you're sharing, you said it inspires you more. But let's dig into that, because I think that's a critical piece. And one of the things we've been speaking about, myself, Rasheshwara, and others, is how we can help each other to share this gift more. And I think that you've given one of the key points around this. So why is it the case that when I share what I know with others and I see them inspired and I see them enlightened by it, why does that help my own spiritual life? Or why does it inspire me more? If you can just dig into what effect that has on you, Saga.
Okay, since I wasn't able to, let's say, articulate it properly, but since you mentioned this whole confident thing, but that gives me almost sort of an external confirmation that, hey, this thing works. Like, I personally, I'm just so familiar that maybe I'm not feeling inspired or enthusiastic on some day, but then when I see that, I'm like, okay, those particular days, I kind of, let's say, it could be sentimental, it is some emotions and everything as well, but I feel more inspired seeing that external representation of what I just said. I'm like, I did not even go through actively researching or, like saying what I'm going to say, but just like passive realizations that are kind of, just in my head. So yeah, that's very inspiring to see.
No, that's wonderful. But that's a really valid point. What you're saying basically is that as we share, we're actually strengthening our own realization, our own faith, our own spiritual confidence at the same time. Now that's really incredible. So thank you very much for sharing that. And that's a significant point. I saw that there was one other person who had their hands up. Shruti, please share whatever you wanted to share with us, please.
Haribol, Prabhu, and Haribol to everyone. I think another point I wanted to add on to was that when you were talking about the atheists and how people tend to believe them more, I also feel like it's because they talk about experiences that they faced. So that, and when you talk about what happens to you, that's what makes the other person understand you more and they can relate to you more. So like every time I've spoken to like people who call themselves atheists, they always talk about how they had an experience which made them realize that there is no such thing as a higher power or anything. And I've noticed the same thing with myself. Whenever I talk about Krishna and my experiences with him, that's when people tend to relate to it. And that's when people are actually interested, rather than when I actually just talk about, I don't know, teachings or something that I haven't personally experienced anything with. So I think that is like a really important point.
Trudy, that's dynamite. Thank you very much for sharing that point. It's so interesting. So I used to do regular classes at Cambridge University. So you would go down there, I think once, it was every week. And there was a group of, we had the Krishna Conscious Society at Cambridge. I mean, I think we still do actually. But I was doing it, I think it was about a year. And there was one guy who came to one of our presentations. He was an atheist. So Cambridge University have their own atheist society. So he asked me to come to their atheist society to give a presentation on Krishna consciousness. And it was great fun. So we came there. I'll see if I can find the recording. I must have it somewhere. Maybe one of those old cassettes. But anyway, what was really interesting, because there was no fear, because Prabhupada breaks it down, right? If you know the teaching, Prabhupada just breaks it down. I've been fantasizing. I'm going to be honest with you. I saw this debate with Richard Dawkins, and I was just in my mind, I was just imagining getting into a debate with him. And what was happening, and it very much relates to a verse I was speaking on recently. It was Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text number 11. In the purport, Prabhupada explains that one cannot know God simply by one's mental effort. And he's making the emphasis that you have to actually surrender. So I was imagining having this debate with Richard Dawkins. And my whole point to him is, look, arguments are not conclusive, because when you talk about science, it starts with, because I studied this at university. So one of the things we studied at university was scientific method. And the whole scientific pursuit begins on what they call axioms, right? So these are reasonable assumptions. That's what they call. So for example, a scientific axiom is that we can understand everything about creation through material means. It's just an assumption. It's not something that they prove, because unless you assume something like that, you can't even make the endeavor for material science. So it's an assumption. And what I was imagining was saying to him, okay, but it's just as easy, you could just as reasonably argue that there'll be some aspects of reality which are not material, therefore you need a different methodology to perceive them. That's also reasonable, okay? Because his reasonable assumption is a priori. It's something that they assume, and it's the basis of everything else that they do. Our assumption is also a priori. And so what I was saying to him is that that's fine. You have your assumption, I have mine. But we're saying that you can know God by following this process. So if you're serious, why not check out the process? Why not do the process for yourself and see if it works, right? So the idea is very simple, that if you, to your point, if you have some real understanding, if you've churned it, and if it can relate to your life, okay, I've done the process, I'm doing the process, I'm having certain experiences, I'm saying you can do the process and check for yourself. Will you do it? Right? So that gives a lot of power. Yeah, so relating it. So you're talking about something that you've experienced, something that you've known. So I mentioned this in the debate. Well, it wasn't even a debate. They asked me to give a presentation, then they asked me some questions. What was so interesting, he didn't tell me he was going to do this. I don't know how I came across it. They had a magazine, and there was an article in the magazine after that discussion, because obviously there was nothing that they couldn't win the argument. But they wrote an article, and the title for the article is "The Case for a Spiritually Tolerant Atheism." That was the heading of the title. That was the heading of the article. And it just got me thinking, yeah, because Prabhupada and our teachings in our Siddhanta is incredible. It's mind-blowing, right? And it's much better, to be honest with you, than a lot of the stuff that you see out there. They don't have such a rigorous argument, a rigorous logical way of looking at things. If you're interested in this, let me know. I've got some incredible lectures on this topic as well. But anyway, that's an aside. But yeah, Shruti, thank you very much for that. I know your hand's up. Was there anything else that you wanted to add before we go to any other comments?
Yeah, so again, relating back to like the being uncertain about what you're talking about and how other people can sense that, again, that comes from the part where you need to, most of the times it's because if you are uncertain about something, it's because you haven't really experienced it. And that's where that certainty comes from, because you're like 95% of the time, you're so sure that this is what you have experienced. And that's why you can be certain about it. So I think that's, again, it all just relates back to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as we go through those 4 stages, hearing about it, trying to understand it, trying to apply it so we can experience, then it makes your faith deeper, but it also puts the teachings much deeper into your consciousness as well. Thank you very much for that. I think Ananda Madhav, did you want to make a comment?
I think Amit also had his hand up. So I think he wanted to share something as well.
Please, Amit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, like I feel like when you are teaching instead of passively listening, you feel more responsible for the content.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you are interacting with the material more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and, you know, I also believe that it could come from a good place in your heart where you are like, you know, you definitely want to add value to the people who are going to be listening to you. But it could also come from a place of fear because you don't want to look like a stupid person in front of so many people. Yeah, so that's what I think.
Thank you very much for that. Absolutely. And we will talk about this idea of using fear positively a bit later on. Okay, good stuff. So I'm going to bring the slides up unless there's any, oh, Risheshwar, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something that stuck with me since I heard it. It's from one of Bhuta Bhavana's godbrothers, Sri Vrindavan. And we speak about this word realizations a lot. What is a realization? And when he said this, he said realizations are practical experiences of scriptural truth. And that really, really sat with me because I'd never thought of, you know, this word realization in such a way, but it helped reconcile a lot of different things that I'd heard previously, and really is a testimony to what it practically, you know, the experience we have from following the process.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And those things you can't fake. So when we have that kind of realization, it's conveyed in so many subtle ways, and it does impact people's consciousness as well. So thank you very much for that. Let's get the slides back up. Unless there's anyone else who wanted to make a comment. Okay, in that case, let's get the slides back up. So what we want to do is expand horizons. I'm just going to make sure I can control. So we did the follow-up. We talked about why we want to do the follow-up. And we came to this slide last time about expanding our horizons and really seeing where we can take this and what we can become. Okay, so a few things that we talked about last time. We said we were going to reverse engineer, and that was really taking a different angle on certain topics that we may have heard, may have explored, may have discussed before. So this is actually also very important. I remember being at one TSI retreat a few years ago. And it was interesting because one of the things that they were talking about is how sometimes they hear the same class again and again. And it's the same class, same comments, literally the same examples. And you can kind of see people like starting to tune out because they're not feeling connected to what they're being told. But when there's realization, and Prabhupada writes about this in First Canto Bhagavatam, chapter 4, text number 1. He says, one should not try to give some other understanding out of the material. And at the same time, one must realize it so well that they can explain it nicely for a given audience. And that's a very powerful purport. So we wanted to take a different angle to keep it fresh, to keep it alive, and to find new ways of looking at it that can keep us all excited and also moving forward. And we asked you a few key questions. So what would you like most about the world if everyone was like you? And I think we got you to do some discussion. We asked you what would frustrate you most about the world if everyone was like you. And we also asked you this question. What qualities would you want your children to have? And I'm going to again pause this one. We're going to go back. So this was in relation to association. Why did we ask you that question? Why were we asking you to think about the future and the qualities that you would want your children to have? Does anyone recall how we connected that from the last discussion? If you do have any thoughts, please raise your hand, your electronic hand or your physical hand if your camera's on. Okay, Shameshri Prema, over to you.
Okay, so the connection is between what we want for our future and what we're ready to apply in our own lives to be that example for our future.
Absolutely.
Is that the full answer to your question? Is that an answer to your question?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you very much for that. See, what we were trying to get at with that question was that we all know that whatever we are, well, let's go back. We all know that what our parents are, we do pick up on that, okay? We can pick up on that in two ways. It can be negative habits that we spend some time trying to throw off because we picked them up when we were younger, or they can be positive habits that we're very happy to have as part of our character based upon being around our parents and absorbing those things, okay? So what we were trying to get at here was that actually what you are is going to rub off onto your children. And if you recall the backstory that we mentioned, so a friend of ours, they have a young child and they're working very hard to work on themselves because they don't want to put certain anxieties or negative character patterns that they have. They don't want their children to have those same patterns. For example, let's say someone feels that they're overly timid or feels that they don't have enough integrity, right? They don't want that to rub off onto their children. They want their children to do well and to be happy and to be successful. So what we're getting at here is that the things that we don't work on within ourselves, those are the things that you should not be surprised end up entering into the consciousness of your children. So this can be a catalyst for us to really think, okay, if I don't want these weaknesses to be there with my children, let me do the work to develop myself and to balance those areas so that when I do have children, or maybe some of you do, I'm not sure, we have quite a few people on the call, so that when my children come into the world, they don't pick up those same habits or negative patterns because of being around me as their father or their mother. Oftentimes people don't reach that conclusion until it's quite late, but we can pick this up early. These things can be another catalyst for us to change. And I'm going to give you one very intense example. So there are many people now, many devotees, who find that their children are not into Krishna consciousness, right? And I heard this in the class, it was so interesting. And they can't figure out why, right? And there was a class I heard, and it was a very interesting point. And what was said is that the children pick up the mood of the parents, right? So sometimes the parents will go to their seniors, their guru, and say, look, I go to the temple, and the child hardly goes. And one of the spiritual leaders was explaining to some of the parents, he said, what the child picks up is your mood. Because you're thinking that you go to the temple quite often, but the mood is you only go to the temple when you feel like it, okay? It just happens to be the case that you feel like going once a week or once a month. So the child has picked up your mood, which is go to the temple whenever you feel like it, not because you should, but just because you just happen to feel like it that day. So now that's the principle that they picked up from the parent. The detail is now what comes into play. The principle is go whenever you feel like it. That's what the child got from the parent. The parents happen to feel like it once a week. The child happens to feel like it once every festival. So even though it looks like, oh, what's wrong with the child? They're not doing what I do. No, but they are doing what you're doing, but they're doing what you're doing at the level of principle. Huh? They're doing what you're doing at the level of principle because they pick up the mood. Now, a higher level is we're going to the temple, because it's good to serve. We're going to the temple to see Krishna. We're going to the temple because we love to serve the devotees. Then the child will also pick up that mood and that catalyst. But the energy, and it's a very subtle thing, and I was trying to understand why. Because what happens is we know that there's aura contact. Many traditions don't talk about this. but what goes on in our consciousness affects other people. Right? In fact, and my spiritual master writes this in Leadership for an Age of Higher Consciousness, if we were, let's say we had a more subtle consciousness, people with more subtle consciousness, they can literally pick up what another person is thinking or feelings. And there's many things on this online, right? There are many people who are empaths, and they're more consciously aware of what's going on in another person's consciousness. So all of these factors, they're real. And in Leadership 1, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj says, thoughts are things. So they can actually move through the subtle environment. Before I became a devotee, I was into like metaphysics and so on. And they wrote, I used to read a lot about this. Sometimes they'll call it psychic attack. So someone's thinking very negatively about you, and their negative thinking is actually like a subtle attack on the other person, right? And anyway, we won't go into all of that, but those things are real. I had, I knew one devotee. I know one devotee actually. His daughter's psychic, and he was giving class at the London Temple, ISKCON Radha Londonishvara. And I was in the class, and he mentioned in the class how his daughter told him, she said, "Dad, you know what, when you get angry with someone, from your third eye, like a line of energy comes from your third eye. It's like a laser, and it burns into the aura of the person that you're angry with." His daughter told him that because she could see it, you know, and that's real, by the way. That is real. That kind of stuff does happen, you know. So what we're thinking, it really does have an effect on the ether, on the environment. So when we have the right understanding, the right consciousness, the right mood, what we are is affecting, especially those nearest and dearest to us, our children and others. It can literally boost people. Some people, their consciousness is more high energy. When they're around people, people feel energized. And I'm sure all of us have experienced the opposite. How many of you, raise your hands, have been around someone and you just feel, they may not even say much, and you just feel drained? Anyone have had that experience? Or is it just me? Okay. So one of my colleagues, we have a term for this. We call them the energy vampires or the mood hoover. They just suck the mood out of the environment, you know? So absolutely, we want to be very mindful of that. And we want our influence to be as positive as possible, which is why we were asking this question. What qualities would you want your children to have? We may come back to that a bit later on. Okay, now, let's get into a few other points. I'm going to stop for a moment. I'm going to tell you something. I was going to do maybe a whole program on this. Actually, before I do, Devaki, did you want to make another comment? Because I can see your hand up. No? Okay. So let me just make a comment on this. I designed something, and I was going to do a whole thing on this, maybe an article, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. I spoke to someone about it and they thought, let's just share it. And I may still do an article on later on. I'm gonna encourage you to design your life, okay? And there's a very simple framework that I've come up with, which works like magic. It really does work like magic. And I'm gonna run you through it. And this is something that you may want to try out. It is loosely based upon Shastra, and I'll try and draw it for you as well, so you get a good idea of what we're talking about. So, I'm going to put it in front of the camera as well. So we'll put here, so left, right, so vision. And we'll put here, responsibilities. Okay, so this is a framework that I came up with that you can use if it works for you. And it's not that it has to work for everyone. I'm going to take you through it. I call it the tri-plan, okay? T-R-I, tri-plan. So the first thing is you have your daily schedule in the middle, okay? And imagine this, I'm doing on paper, but imagine if it's like a big board. So some people, I've got 2 whiteboards in my room, okay? So I've got 2 whiteboards, which are like, you know, that you can rub things off and then just kind of rewrite on them. So what I do is, the middle section is my schedule, my daily schedule. Now I create that, and I create it based upon 2 things. On this side, I've got my vision. So one of the things we ask you to do is to think about 1 year, 3 year, or 5 years down the line. So what you do is you have a clearly mapped out vision of where you want to go, whether it's a year from now, 3 years, or 5 years. You pull it down, but you pull it down very clear, very inspiring in present tense, okay? So you have that on one side of the board. Now, on the other side, you have the kind of day-to-day responsibilities. So let's take a week period. So over the week, there's certain things I've got to do. I've got to do yoga. I've got to do some schoolwork. I've got some responsibilities around the house, maybe cleaning, whatever it is. I get them down on this side. And then what I do on a day-to-day basis is when I'm creating my daily schedule, and you, of course, every day you'll rub this off and create a new schedule, I'm taking some things from my weekly responsibilities and I put it into my daily schedule. But I'm also looking at my long-term vision, and I break off a piece, something from my long-term vision, and I put it into my daily schedule. And by doing that, what I ensure is that every day I'm doing something which is taking care of my maintenance, right? So these things are maintenance. I'm taking care of my health. I'm taking care of my relationships. So there's time with friends and family, time with my partner. There's time for my health. So a walk, exercise, yoga, whatever. I'm taking something from my daily or weekly responsibilities, but I'm also mindful of my long-term vision. And I'm every day taking something from my long-term vision into my daily schedule. That means if I keep doing this, inevitably, I'm going to come closer to my long-term goals, right? And the beauty of having this kind of framework is you see it all in the same place. See, look, let's be very clear. Different things work for different people based upon their nature. So I know that my nature, if I've got loads of different pieces of paper in one place, then I've got an app I've got to use somewhere else, and then I've got things on the board that I need to remember to read, it's too much for me. For me, it's inefficient, ineffective. I want it all in one place. So when I look on the board at the beginning of the day, I can see what's my long-term vision, what are my weekly activities, and I create my schedule from there, right? So I call it the tri-plan, 3 areas. You're making that schedule every day, and you know at the same time, and this is really interesting, you know at the same time that you're taking care of your weekly responsibilities, so nothing falls through the cracks, because in this column, I've got things for my physical health, I've got things for my emotional health, I've got things around my learning, I've got things around my relationships, I've got things around my work or my, my sadhana or my friendship circle or my service, whatever it is. It's all here, and every day I'm taking something from this here. But every day I'm moving closer to my long-term vision, because and we spoke about this last session. The idea you have a vision that's attainable and meaningful to you. Okay, and if you remember, we asked you to bounce that vision off other people to make sure it's realistic. There's nothing that sabotages people in success more than having unrealistic goals, right? Because they've just decided their vision in a vacuum. There should be no vision in a vacuum. It should be that vision, you've crafted it and you've got another pair of eyes. So you think this is realistic in a year. Your friend may say, you know what, I think you can knock this out in 6 months, right? But let's give you some wriggle room. Let's give it a year, but I reckon you can knock this out in 6 months. You got a vision, and your vision is, this is where I want to be in 5 years. Your friend's like, you know what, I think that could take you longer. Let's reset that for 10 years. If you get it done ahead of time, great, no problem. But that's what people often do wrong, because we're close to this material. So I'm always encouraging people, get another pair of eyes on this stuff, right? Why not take full advantage of your network? People who love you, who care about you, who are mature, and who know you, okay? And one of the things, and I'm gonna put some stuff out on this, I promise you that, because I've already been working on it. Rasheshwar and I, we were in communication before this session. I've got so much on personality and natures, which you'll find incredible, because the vision is not the same for everyone. We have a crisis in the world right now. The crisis in the world is of 2 types. The first thing is ignorance. When people are in ignorance, they think that everyone can do everything equally. That's not true. And I'll tell you, it's like the story of the ugly duckling, right? So-called ugly duckling who's trying to be like the swans and is being rejected. Sorry, he's trying to be like the other ducks, sorry, and is being rejected. But that same so-called ugly duckling later on finds out it's a swan. One of the biggest crises we have in the modern world is a crisis of self-esteem. Why? Why is there such a crisis of self-esteem? There's many reasons. One is parenting, but one of the biggest hidden reasons for a crisis in self-esteem is because people don't know themselves. So rather than trying to compare yourself to the best version of yourself based upon your actual nature, instead, you've got someone who's very intellectual. He's trying to be like a business person. He can't do it. Or if he does try and do it, it takes 100 times more effort. Whereas for the person who's got the nature to do business, they do it like breathing. You see? So what you're trying to do is to be the best version of what you can. And people talk about that a lot in self-help, but they don't really understand it. To be the best version to be the best version of yourself, you have to actually know your nature. You see? If you know your nature, then you can think, am I the best version of myself? And I'll be honest with you, I have tremendous hope for you guys. You're going to change our movement. You're going to change our community. And one of the ways you're going to do it is rather than forcing people to be everything, and this is what actually, it's not a criticism. The earlier generation, it was emergency time. Prabhupada knew his time was limited, therefore he just had to establish the movement, okay? So kudos to them. I couldn't do the kind of austerities that our previous generation did, okay? But you guys have the opportunity to do something different, okay? And we'll help you. I will pull out material on this stuff that will blow your minds. I've been getting signs all the time from my spiritual master and from other people, like, it's time to let this stuff out. And we've been researching this over years, and you will love it. You will absolutely love this stuff, because then what you guys will do in the future, and this is a prophecy, I promise you, you'll do this. What you guys will do in the future is, rather than causing people untold stress by them trying to be something that they're not, instead what we'll do is we'll work out what people are good at, right? We'll start there. So we'll start on the basis of self-awareness. And then, having understood what someone is good at, then we will engage them accordingly, which is the exact principle of Varnashram. You think about how crazy this is. You wouldn't get someone like Arjuna to spend all of his time sweeping floors. The guy's a military commander, right? He can lead armies. Yudhisthira, at the Battle of Kurukshetra, when Bhishma is instructing me, he's about to become emperor of what? Not emperor of one or two countries. He's about to become emperor of the entire world, right? I was explaining in a class I gave at the Manor. I think it was earlier this year. Our movement can and will become at least 100 times more successful with no additional effort. How? Just by having the right people in the right positions. It's that simple. People who are actually good at leading, let them do the leading. People who are great at making money and scaling stuff, let them make the money for the mission and scale it. People who are good at actually training people, let them do the training. People who like to assist, let them assist, because none of these are inferior. All of them are good, equally good. If you study carefully, you will find that most of the devotees who will go back to God in this lifetime, they're laborers, they're Shudras, because everyone has a certain quality that helps them to go back to Godhead, right? And what do the Shudras have? They have a tremendous service attitude, an incredible service attitude, right? In any society, the vast majority of people will have that nature, right? And so whenever we are able to remove the stigma, right, there's nothing wrong with your nature. Every nature is good, especially when it's engaged in Krishna's service. You'll see the movement will take off. It'll be incredible. And you will see this, and you guys will lead the charge, and you will do this in this lifetime. Watch. Prabhupada's prophecy, 1977, when he left the planet, he said we should implement Varnashram, okay? Now, there's many different dimensions, and different people are empowered to do different dimensions of it. But one is just understanding your nature and playing to your strengths, right? And then the other thing on that, when you understand your nature, it also helps you to understand who's a good partner, right? Because different natures work better with different types of natures, meaning in marriage, right? So if you understand what your nature is, you can immediately find someone who's more likely to be a compatible nature. Therefore, marriages in ISKCON will be much smoother. When marriages in ISKCON are much smoother, the children, and this is interesting also, the children will have one nature. Because the parents who have similar nature, the child will have a similar nature. Their nature will be much more cohesive, and they'll be more peaceful, and they'll be able to make progress faster. All of this stuff is so easily done. Anyway, over the coming weeks, I keep talking about this in terms of my Instagram handle, but I'm going to put it in the chat window again. I've got like a whole range of stuff on this topic. So we'll put it out. If anyone's interested, Instagram me. Just follow me on Instagram at Ed Anoba. And I'll tell you honestly, the reason why I'm also saying this openly is because then it puts me under pressure to make sure I get more stuff out of that nature. Because I've declared it to everyone that I'm going to do it. I've had discussions with Radha Bhakti. We had extensive discussions on this topic. Rasheshwara Madhava and I, we've often discussed it, and it's groundbreaking. So what I do, even at work, I can figure people out very easily, and I know immediately what their value system is. I know immediately what their expectations are, and it just makes social interaction a blast. It gives you the front foot on anyone. You just speak to them, you know exactly who you're dealing with. Done deal. It's incredible stuff. Okay, anyway, I'm going to pause for a moment and ask, are there any other comments before we get on?
I believe Shruti had her hand up if she wants to go.
Is it okay if I share something with you all relating back to the part where you were talking about writing down your long-term goals and your short-term goals? So last month I started working at this, it's my first like ever full-time job. And before I got that, I wrote it down. Like every day I would write it down 3 times in the morning after my morning meditation. And I wrote like the specific date that I was like, on July 10th, 2020, I'll get the call for the job. And I got the call for the job. So like it really, on July 10th, I got the call for the job. I was offered the job. So it really works. Like you should write down what your long-term goals and your short-term goals are as well. And like be sure that you're specific about it. Like I wrote, I will get the job in this office on July 10th, 2020. Like that's how I wrote it. So I just wanted to share my experience about that. When you mentioned that, I thought I should share it.
Thank you. And there's a lot of study that says that when you write things down, see, in the self-help world, they say when you write it down, it makes it clearer to you about what you want. But we know that there's more to it, okay? I call it the Krishna code. So what I do, and because I used to be into like self-help a lot since I was about 13. So then when I learned the teachings in Krishna consciousness, I could then apply the Shastra to have a look at what they were saying. And I could figure out what was true, what was false, and what was partially correct. What actually happens when you write your goals down is you make it very clear to the super soul within your heart exactly what you're looking for. You see, as long as you're cloudy about what you want, Krishna's like, well, you don't know what you're looking for. So, you know, okay. But if you're like Krishna, I distinctly want this, then of course, you want to have it in the mood of surrender. That means you want to have the caveat, if it's best for me. This is what I'm thinking could be good and progressive for me to serve you better. But you know best. So you're trying to do it with devotion, because then Krishna can modify your goal to give you something that may be more progressive than what you're asking for. Okay, so that's also the other factor. So you definitely want to have Krishna in the picture, but that clarity means 2 things. Either through devotion, Krishna may give it to you because it's favorable, or it may be that you've got the karma for that particular outcome, therefore you're receiving that particular outcome. And of course, along with all these things, you're making the proper endeavor towards that particular goal as well. Okay, Rasheshwara, did you have a comment?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, no worries. So we're going to move on. I'm going to go back to the slides. So we've talked about the tri-plan, and we gave you a few things to do. So this idea of looking in the future, what you wanted to achieve. I want to add to what Shruti said. It's not just a question of writing it down in detail. I want to encourage you to use the power of visualization. If anyone's interested in finding out more about this, there's a class by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj on this particular topic, on visualization and spiritual life. And you can find that class on btswami.com. He gives an extensive class about how you can use visualization in spiritual life. But the principle behind it is that if you use all of your senses, when you're imagining something as a Krishna conscious outcome, okay? And think about what I mean by this. You can imagine yourself chanting attentively, right? You can imagine yourself chanting attentively and really relishing the chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You can hear the sound of the chanting in your mind. You can imagine you've got the beads in your hand, the feeling of touching your japa beads, right? With the japa bead bag on over your hand, the feeling of the cloth on your hand, right? You can imagine feeling very blissful, very, very into the chanting. You can reinforce whatever goals you have through visualization. And we mentioned in the last program that the mind doesn't differentiate between what you imagine and what you experience in the real world. So you can literally use the mind lab to prepare or cultivate habits which are favorable to your spiritual life and goals and desires which are favorable to your Krishna consciousness as well. They're really, really powerful. And I encourage you to experiment with that and see what that can do for you, you personally. So that was one thing in terms of using that in terms of your senses. We also ask you to think about the other side. What happens and how you feel if you do not grow? There's a typo there, but we'll ignore that. What happens if you do not grow? Okay? If your bad habits continue onwards, what would your future be like? And what we explained last time is about using your fear to propel you forward. Okay? It's really important. And I just want to have a discussion. First of all, how many of you did that? How many of you engaged in that activity, imagining what would happen if you don't grow? Okay, I can see Shruti has her hand. Okay, we've got a few people. Okay, I'm going to start with Dula. Dula, how did it feel to engage in that activity? Imagining your future if we don't change certain bad habits that we have. How did it feel to do that activity, Dula?
For me, it felt a little bit uncomfortable knowing that I'm not going to be progressing.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to go to, I saw a few other hands up. Who else had their hands up? I just want to dig into how it felt, first of all, to do that activity. Let's go to Anukula Seva Prabhu. How did it feel for you?
Honestly, it was a little too scary, actually, because I felt that if I was not progressing, it's definitely, I'm just going to get worse. Like there was no I couldn't be the same. So it was going to just spiral into something which is unimaginable for me.
Okay, interesting.
And please give us some Vapu.
I wanted to explore what realizations did you get from doing that? Right, because we often talk about overcoming fear, but we're using fear now to think about what happens if I don't change. Shameshri Prema, what were the realizations, or why do we do this?
Okay, so my realization was that I saw a theme persisting for the next however long until I change. So whatever negative quality I've heard people mention about me was the theme if I didn't change. It's like, and it was like, it's not even that it was specific to that quality. It was specific, but when I was writing it, I wasn't thinking about my negative qualities. I was thinking about like what I'm not doing, like what bad habits I have. And it just so happened to relate to a negative quality that other people. So it was like 3 completely different areas that I wanted to change. And if I didn't change, then this particular negative quality was going to continue being supported. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense.
Okay.
Absolutely. And just to give a bit more context to that exercise, there's a point that I heard in class decades ago. And the point was that we know where we are weak. Okay? Every single one of us, if we're honest, and we may not tell people whatever it is, but we know where we're weak. And Maya also knows. Maya also knows where our particular weakness is. And she's efficient. She's a pure devotee, so she doesn't waste time attacking you where you're strong. It's a waste of time. What she does is she'll look to attack us in our weak area. Okay? So therefore, Krishna, he gives us the intelligence to really be conscious, okay, this is where I'm weak. And he gives us the heads up so we will do something about it. You see? That's the beauty of it. We know where we are weak, Maya knows where we're weak, but if we take the heads up, we can start to be extra careful in that area. Okay? We can start to work on that area. We can do more to protect ourselves in that area. We can even make it a research project. We can think, okay, this is my weakness. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, let me look into scripture. Let me listen to classes on that particular area of weakness and what I can do about it, how I can become stronger in that area, right? And it goes back to what we discussed earlier. Think about how confident you'll be, because we're only as strong as our weakest link. You see the point? So in the same way that when we don't prepare properly for a class or a presentation, you're given the class, but you kind of know, I hope they don't ask me that question because I don't really know my stuff, right? Similarly, you go out into the world in Krishna consciousness. You have a certain weakness and you're in denial about it. You just think, I just want to close my eyes and pretend it's not there. You can do that, but Maya's not going to do that. You see? Now, the converse is also true. If you're like, I'm going to be honest about it, I know what it is, I'm working on it, then you've got some incredible power. You go out into the world, you're bulletproof, okay? The area that you're weak, that's where the bulletproof vest is. No one can touch you because you've worked on that area, you've made it strong, incredible power, incredible confidence. There's confidence in 3 modes. Confidence in the mode of ignorance is really a lack of confidence completely. But there's confidence in the mode of passion, where the person is just arrogant and proud. They think that they are stronger than they actually are, and Maya's just going to slap the taste out of your mouth. That's all. But confidence in the mode of goodness, that confidence is based upon humility, because that humility makes you dependent upon the Lord. And that confidence is also based upon knowledge. That's why it's sattvic, right? Because you know what you're doing, you know why you're doing it, you know what the weaknesses are, you've prepared properly. You see? So it's like a solid sense of power. So we want to encourage you in that direction, to really, really tune in. And we also asked you, and I'm going to ask how many of you, okay, I'm going to pause a minute because I can see 2 participants have raised their hands. Shama Sundar and Saga. So let's start with Shama Sundar. What did you want to share? And then we'll go to Saga, please.
Hare Krishna. I think you pretty much covered it. I didn't realize I had it up actually. It was just mainly about reflecting on if I weren't thinking about changing the fears I have now and the anarthas I have, where would it lead me to? And it's quite interesting because I was reflecting on this yesterday, and a devoted friend of mine actually highlighted this point that, you know, this is something you need to sort out. In a world of people that have the same anarthas, I don't know how the world would function. So I really like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Shama Sundar, were we in touch yesterday on text message?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining. We will be in touch again. Haribol, it's great to see you. Haribol. And then Saga, was Saga on the line? Saga, please share your wisdom.
Yeah, sure, Prabhu. I think I was just reflecting on the same point and how you were saying, how did it feel to kind of do that exercise? So to be honest, I know the exercise was supposed to be you imagining yourself in the future and imagining if this didn't happen. But for me, it kind of became the present. I'm like, hey, like like the future that could have been, this is my present, and I could have done something in the past that I didn't. And there was a lot of, let's say, regret, because I'm like, dude, like the time is gone, the opportunity is gone. I didn't even get anything except regret. Like it's such a bad exchange. Like it's not, providing me any value. I'm like, let's say, even if I didn't get, I think so that kind of helped me to take this approach that even if I'm not doing something, it cannot be like all or nothing. I could have tried. Even if I didn't achieve 100% of what I wanted to achieve, I could have been somewhere, and that somewhere would have been better than, like my current position.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for that, Saga. Really useful point. And I can see David Kipriti, you want to make a comment.
Yes, I just wanted to share about the exercise. It was really powerful doing it because I've heard a lot about visualization, but I've never actually done it. And so for me, I noticed like it helped me see like which of my goals are most important, especially, and seeing like how devastated I felt if I didn't do it. And it helped me see like what things are most important to me and how they need to be given more time and they're not given enough time. And it was probably the first one I did. Like I actually almost started crying when I realized just how important it was to me. And I think I knew, but like visualizing it and picturing how you wanted your success to be and then the negative, I was like, whoa. Like, and how I saw like I would feel like I just wasted my guru's time. I wasted my time. Like if I didn't do the certain goal, I was just like, it was really a reality check. Like, okay, this needs to be getting like front attention then if it's that important. So yeah, thank you so much for instructing us to do that because it was really a powerful experience.
No, as I said at the beginning, I'm excited to be with you guys because we're all learning together. The best way to learn anything is to share it. So this is all part of our growth experience. And to be honest, in this lifetime, this is my responsibility. I had a conversation with Satchidananda Maharaj years ago, and he told me something. He said that, he told me something very clearly. He said, Bhuta Bhavana, he said, the young people, he said, they need training. He said, you have this gift, you can train people. And I love doing it as well. So it's like, we're going to do this together. And we've got loads, this is nothing. We've got loads of stuff to share with you, but that's another talk. That's another presentation. Okay, Rishesha Ramadeva, yes.
No, just acknowledging your point.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to move on. I'm just going to bring the slide back up, and we'll just see however else we want to go into it before we end. Okay, so we talked about some of those qualities. I'm just going to check if there's anything on the other side. Ah, that was it. Yes, and this is really important. Feedback from those who know you. Again, show of hands, how many of you reached out to people who knew you and asked for some feedback? Okay, positive and developmental. Okay, Shamas, okay, we've got quite a few people. Okay, now I don't want to get into, first, we may or may not get into what they actually said, but I want to get into the experience of reaching out to other people and asking them for some feedback. How did it feel? Let's start there. Who'd like to begin? How did it feel to reach out to people in your circle and ask them for feedback? Let's start there. Surabi?
Haribol.
Haribol.
So yeah, that experience, it was very scary at first. I definitely think that if you're not ready, you shouldn't ask your friends about your flaws and all. But but I did ask, and I found out that a lot of the things that were my flaws were also like the backside of them were also my strengths. Like, wow. Yeah, right? So like a lot of my insecurities and things like that also make me very cautious and very like focused and very focus on what I want. And so yeah, I found like it really opened my eyes to like my like the double side of strengths and weaknesses.
And I think that's thank you for that. That's such an incredible insight, that actually what we think about as our weaknesses, if we dig beneath them, if we can transform them, beneath that there's actually a strength there. That's a really, really profound point. So thank you. And that's one of the reasons why knowing about our development areas can be so crucial. You know, I'll share with you another reason why it's so good to know this kind of stuff, because then we can see how we can complement each other. This is what's going on in the world right now. There's such, and this happens sometimes in our communities, liberals and conservatives, right? Both have some valid points. But what happens in a Vedic society, or the principle of Varnashram, is that everyone is superior in a particular area, okay? So let's say you have the intellectuals, they may be superior philosophically. Then you have the business people, they may be superior in terms of scaling stuff. Then you've got the kind of warrior class, they'll be superior in leading, okay? So that's one thing. But the beauty of our tradition is the following step. First of all, everyone's superior in one area. Even the labor class, they'll be superior in art, in artistry. But the real power of it is that the second stage kicks in. The first stage is I recognize my nature. I know the things that I've got a natural talent in. But what makes it even more powerful is that I use my natural talent for the benefit of everyone else. You see? That's why it really works. It's not just, oh, but we're saying that this person's better in that area. Yes, they've got a natural talent, a natural gift, and you've got a different gift. But the reason why it works so much is because everyone is using their gift for the benefit of everyone else. You see? So the trouble in the modern society is that there's two types of avidya, or ignorance. First of all, we pretend that everything's the same. And actually, sometimes it's for good reason, because many people who do this, they've got good intention. It's because if I don't pretend everyone's the same, people will mistreat other people. And unfortunately, there's some truth in that, right? Or the other reason why we pretend everything is the same is because if we recognize difference, then people will claim that they're superior to other people. So Varnashram kicks out both dynamics. One, everyone's superior in a different area. And two, if you're superior, you can't start gloating about it and showing off and trying to pretend you're superior to other people. No, you're only superior in this area, meaning that you're actually inferior in the other three areas. That's the first point. But in the one of four areas that you're actually superior, give it up. Use what you can produce for the benefit of everyone. You see? That's how the Varnashram system works. That's why it actually is sustainable, because we don't deny differences, but we don't use the differences to lord it over people. You recognize difference and you use the difference to serve the other people. So it's cooperative. That's what we're trying to achieve. And when you do that, we will be able to knock things out the park. Anyway, there's more to come on that in future sessions. So I love the point that you were making about understanding that the development areas, they house a gift. And I asked you to do a couple of things. It wasn't just about areas that you could improve on, but strengths. Was anyone surprised to learn strengths or good qualities about themselves that they were not so conscious of? If that's the case, I just want to hear from you. Does anyone have that experience? When they got feedback, positive and developmental, they heard some things which were like, oh, I didn't know I was good at that. Or I didn't realize that that was a strong point that I had. If anyone had that experience, I'd like to hear about it.
Prabhu, I believe Shyam Sundar and Shruti had their hand up.
Okay, no worries. So let's start with Shyama Sundar, and then we'll go to Shruti.
My hand up was actually from the previous point, so we can move on.
Yeah. Okay. Or do you want to share something on the previous point before we move on?
I think it was covered. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. Thank you, Shruti. Over to you.
Mine was also from the previous point about the weaknesses. I honestly, recently I had sort of like this epiphany where I stopped looking at it as a weakness, and it's just like Krishna gave it to me, but I'm just not using it the right way. Like I think Surabhi was saying, like it was actually her weakness. She looked at it, she realized that there was like another side to it, which could be used as a strength. So it's like Krishna gave us all these qualities, but we're just using it the wrong way, which is why it's looked at as a weakness. But if we turned it around and started using it to help us, then it'll be a strength. So that was just what I wanted to add on.
Thank you so much. And that's so profound as well. This is the idea of alignment. Sometimes it's considered that there are no bad qualities, there's just the wrong application of that particular quality, right? So there's a time and a place for bringing that quality out, but when you don't bring it out the right time in the right place, it becomes problematic. So there's one devotee who wanted me to provide some mentoring, and I kind of said I don't have time to do it, but I did address with them one thing, and I was so impressed by them. I can't lie, I was so impressed. And what impressed me was that they took it to heart and they used it. And I thought, okay, even though I don't have time, I will give this person more guidance, because you tell them, they take it seriously, they run with it. It's like, okay, we can invest in people who are going to take it and run. So this devotee has a warrior nature. And I was explaining that traditionally in the Gurukul, the Kshatriyas, if you know people who've got Kshatriya natures, like Radha Bhakti or Risheshwara Madhava, they're very straightforward, they're very direct, right? They're just going to tell you, look, I'm not happy about this, right? And it's wonderful. And this person has that quality, and it's very, very useful. But I was explaining that in the Gurukul, Kshatriyas were also taught diplomacy. Why? Because even though you've got a natural tendency to be straightforward, it's not always about us. It's about what's best for the people that I'm leading. And therefore, for the people that you're leading, oftentimes you should be straightforward, but there'll be times where you can actually achieve a better outcome for everyone by being tactful and diplomatic. So in the Gurukul, the Kshatriyas will be trained. They'll be trained to refine their straightforwardness, but not to lose it, because it's necessary for leaders to have that. But they would also be trained to be diplomatic. So know when to use which quality, right? Because to your point, it's not that one's good and one's bad. What makes it good is that you use the right tool at the right time with the right person for the right outcome, you see? And you see this in world politics right now. Sometimes you can have world leaders who are going to create a war just because they're not prepared to deal with the same situation diplomatically, right? And because of that lack of awareness of what's the right approach, therefore everyone else gets into difficulty or anxiety. So it's knowing how to align. That's absolutely crucial. So thank you for that. Saga, I believe you had a comment.
Yeah, I mean, it's regarding the same point that you were mentioning, that, how was it knowing your own strengths? So I reached out to, a couple of friends, especially my family. So I realized that I could be a little pushy sometimes with, things that I really feel strongly about. But then I consistently got the comment that, hey, we actually like that push, because sometimes, you really need that push. I'm like, okay, I didn't realize it could be good. So as you were speaking, it's not really the quality that makes it good or bad, but it's mostly the application.
It's the application. Thank you. And I got some, I contacted Radha Bhakti because I wanted to bounce off her perception. And so and what she shared was actually really, really interesting. I made some notes on it because I was thinking, okay, I think I come across a little bit too much like this. And I was just like, well, okay, let me just check. Let me just find out. So I like to take part in these things as well. And actually this whole exercise, this is something that my own mentor would do over many years. And so it was very interesting to get the feedback. Okay, because a lot of the way that we're interacting with people is based upon perception. People are not interacting with you based upon how you are necessarily. They're interacting with you based upon how you're perceived to be. Okay? So for harmonious interactions, you're really trying to find out, how do I come across, right? You may feel you're very gentle, right? I often feel I'm just very soft and quiet. And then other people are like, dude, no, you come across very, very different. And I'm like, okay, I can factor that in. Maybe in a class I come across, and some people are like, no, on a one-to-one also, you come across that way. All right, fair enough. But it's good because I can then recalibrate my perception of myself. So I can get a more realistic view of how I'm coming across to other people and then adjust accordingly. It's really, really powerful. Did anyone else have any comment or any realization? Ananda Madhava, yes.
I think Nandini, she had something.
Oh, yes, Nandini.
Hello,
Nandini
yes,
Sharma.
I did. How are you all, everyone? I just wanted to quickly share based on that point. I think that it's important to share our thoughts or our feelings or wanting to know what our weaknesses or our strengths might be with people that we care about, just because, or that are important to us, just because I feel like we get so stuck in our own heads that we sometimes twist things around in our own heads, whether it's something that we're insecure about or something that we don't feel good about, because we tend to always look at the negative sides of ourselves. We don't tend to look at the positive. So when you speak to people who you actually care about, they tend to do the opposite. They look at what is more positive about you. And then that can surprise you, because you can think to yourself, well, wow, I didn't realize that I had those qualities, or maybe I should change the way that my mindset is and try to be more positive, and then probably more positive things will happen in life as well.
Brilliant point. Thank you very much. And it's just think about what we've been doing for like the last however long. It's just incredible. Just in this group, you've shared so many powerful points of realization. So we're opening up, and what you shared, I mean, you're sharing so many points I've not thought about. And when I'm hearing you, I'm thinking, okay, and I'll make a little bit of a note about some of the things that you're saying, because I'm learning so much in the exchange. So let me throw it out. Anything else? Anyone else had a comment when you did this, when you reached out to people for understanding about how you come across both positively and areas that they feel you could do better, improve, be stronger? Any other realizations, anything else that you learned about yourself, or any realizations about the process itself when you did this? Feel free to raise your hand. I think Shamasunda, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Prue, I think the one thing that came to mind to start with is the fact that I actually have someone to reach out to. I know devotees, and even especially people new to the movement, where they don't know where to go, what to do. And just the fact that I can part of the mentorship system, I have a mentor, I have devotees that are friends. And the fact that I have devotees that are friends, just that point that they're friends, but they're devotees as well. So they understand where I'm coming from, and they understand my desire, and as having Krishna, or trying to endeavor to have Krishna in the center. And I think that's so important. And it's just such a point that I sometimes neglect, you know, being born and raised into the movement, is that you kind of neglect and forget how lucky you are to be a part of something like this as well, to have this access. People are seeking, trying for years to find this. So yeah, I think that's just one point I really wanted to highlight.
Thank you. And you've really reminded us to have that gratitude. And I think that's beautiful, because you took it right to the foundation. The fact that we can ask other people for feedback, the fact that there are people there who do know us, who are well-wishers, that's a huge blessing. Thank you very much for that. I saw your hand up also, Saga. Was there anything you wanted to share?
Oh no, that was excellent. I'm just going to lower it.
Okay, no problem. Okay, any other comments before we make one or two last remarks and then close? Because I'm also conscious of your time, and I know that you have other things to do. David Kipriti, you had a comment.
Yes, so I did the exercise, and I think it was helpful for me because, like, some of the things that I thought, like, in terms of the negative, that I was like, oh, they're going to totally say this. They didn't say it, and they said, so some of the things they said, I was like, okay, I thought that, but then some were different things. So it also shows that, like, you know, what I might think, like, might not be what they're thinking. So I feel like, you know, taking this information that I got, I can now be like, okay, now how do I want to use this to move forward? And I just think it's so powerful, because I've heard about it, but like, again, I haven't really ever done it. But like, when you actually like push past this, you know, being scared, like, it's just amazing when you can actually hear how people perceive you, and what them knowing you, how do they think you can grow. And that's so powerful, because they know who you are, and so they have your best interest at heart, so they're going to tell you what you need to hear. So I made the prayer before because I was kind of nervous to hear the negative, because that's harder for me. The positive, of course, everyone likes that, but the negative is harder. So I was like praying to Krishna to help me be open and not get like my ego gets like flared up. So it was powerful just to see that. So yeah, it's powerful.
And before I go to Saga, I just want to add, I'd like you to pay that forward, all of you. Reach out to someone and give them that positive. Do you realize that you really come across that you've got this great quality, this quality, I really appreciate this about you. And of course, make it authentic. This is not a technique. You're going to share with them something that you genuinely do appreciate about them. And in that way, you're going to reinforce and encourage them in their devotion. And of course, the love you give pursues you. What we give out to other people is exactly what we're going to get back in even greater measure. Thank you for that. Saga, over to you.
Yeah, I think it just comes back to the whole point that you kind of mentioned it last in the retreat, that it's very subtle, but what you're seeking is already within you, and the energy that you give out is exactly what you're going to get yourself. So I think in trying to help people like that, it's just it's a win-win, right? It's going to help you, it's going to help them. So yeah, that was good realization while doing that exercise.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so one of the things I'm also going to touch upon, and then we'll see if people need to leave at this time, that's fine. And if there's questions, we can get into questions, whatever works for you guys. I think you've been a very engaged audience. One of the things I want to talk about also is the importance of that wider principle of paying it forward. So we've had many discussions with many devotees around the world. Wherever we have a community of devotees where we're not reaching out to and nurturing the young, the next generation, that area dies. Because what happens is, as people get older, they've got less energy because the physical body's just got less energy. They've got other responsibilities, work responsibilities, family responsibilities, marriage responsibilities. We really need, therefore, to empower and to assist and to inspire all of you as the next generation, in whichever way, shape, or form you're ready to do, to also take that step forward, right? To kind of find ways to reach out to, especially other young people, you know, especially to other young people, and see how we can deliver that message. And all the benefits that you spoke about, sharing and being inspired, seeing how other people light up because they're hearing about these things. All of these are the benefits and the gifts that come to us as we find new, interesting, exciting, adventurous, blissful ways to share what we have with other people. You know, so I know that one of the things that we're really looking at is how we can assist you in being empowered to have an exciting spiritual life and to share those dynamic spiritual gems that you're tasting, you're experiencing with other people as well. Saga, you had a comment on this?
No, I was just thinking.
You're just agreeing? Okay, fantastic. So on that point, I just want to hear from you. I mean, are there any comments, any thoughts, any realizations on that point in particular? And I'll just drop something in. I recorded something which I think will be useful for you guys, and we'll hopefully share that this month, maybe towards the end of this month. And it's just around this whole idea, and it links again to nature's, this whole idea of evaluating and valuing ourselves properly. Because that can be one of the things that can help us to feel, okay, you know what? I'm happy about myself. I value myself. I'm comfortable in sharing what I have with other people and reaching out to other people. It's a very, very powerful mindset to cultivate. So we have some material that we put together on that. But I just want to hear your thoughts on this particular point. Shameshwari Prema, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so one thing I'm thinking about on this point is that we need the permission, so oftentimes we need the permission to be vulnerable, to share, to connect. We need permission for so many things. And so I think that it's really important that you're mentioning that, yes, like let's continue to share what's valuable to us and inquire from others what's valuable to them. I was listening to an interview with Chaitanya Charan Prabhu and Yogeshwar Prabhu on Facebook. And what Yogeshwar Prabhu said was like, it's the responsibility of every leader to personally reach out to every member of the community and find out who they are, what drives them, what inspires them. And I can just like imagine, like I can just visualize like how much communities would change. And the beautiful thing about it is that we can do it like, even if we don't hold the position, we can just do it as a friend, you know, and this space here, I feel like is giving us permission to share and inquire from each other and just remembering like how important it is, and just like planting that seed. And we might not even remember it, but it might just plant a seed, and then maybe something else will spark it, and we'll be reminded to like create a personal relationship with somebody, just to know how important it is for the heart to feel like, yes, like you are valued. And I know that for you it's also valuable when I share about myself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And I think that's really, really important, that we take the responsibility, we reach out, we don't wait for someone else to do it. I can see, Rashesha, you have your hand up, and I was going to come to you also, because I was going to ask you and Radha Bhakti, because I know you have so many years of experience in terms of outreach, especially to students, to just share any thoughts, insights, or realizations that you've had on your journey in this regard. Over to you.
Radha Bhakti, please go ahead. So I just wanted to share that when we take the opportunity to share this with others, the enthusiasm that we get from it, it's, that should be the primary reason, right? If you remember what Bhaktisiddhanta or Prabhupada told his disciples, that even if no one is in the room, right, we're still sharing this for everyone that's there, because he's like, even if we don't see people, all the parampara, they're still there with us at all times, right? But the moment we start sharing this, it becomes so much deeply ingrained in us. We feel the enthusiasm, and then naturally people just see it in you when you start doing it. You don't have to even say anything, because you'll see that there'll be a natural high for you to want to do that for somebody else, because you've received it from somebody else. So again, that's how the parampara system works, is that when we have received something so great and we've taken the time to first experience it ourselves, that's always the first principle, is to first save ourselves, as Prabhupada would say, is then to take that overflow, and naturally it just goes to other people.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that. And that's really powerful. The more we give, the more we get, actually. Radha Bhakti, please.
I don't really have anything brilliant to say. I'll just say that it is the most powerful, it is the most rewarding experience to share Krishna with others. And Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu always taught me that even if we just know 60% of something, even if we just know 2% of something, even if we just know 1% of something, let's share that, because then that realization, as we've learned today, becomes stronger in us when we share with other people. So even if all you know is chanting Hare Krishna makes me feel peaceful, go share that with anybody that will listen, and that realization will become stronger and stronger in you. And the only other point that I'll say is that Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu mentioned this, is that there won't be a time like this in your life again.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be 30 or 35 years old and look back and say, damn, I wish I did that when I had the energy, or when I was in school, or when I was living at home, or whatever the situation is, because your life is going to change. And I'll also just say that people your age, most of the people on this call are in university, or they're young professionals. The world is in the midst of a global pandemic. We're all going through some mental health stuff right now. But people your age in particular, without a global pandemic, especially in your 20s, I said this before, that we have this quarter life crisis where it's a real thing. In your 20s especially, your 20s are marked by so much change in your life and in the lives of your friends, whether it's getting married or divorced or having children or parents dying, changing careers. I mean, it's an unbelievably tumultuous time of change. And so the time is now for you to get involved, and there is such a strong need, and you are equipped with the tools. And we've said this before, you have a mountain of support behind you. So please take advantage. I know we're all here for you to provide whatever help, support, care, resources that you need. And again, something I hear Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu say a lot as well is that it's going to move. The movement is going to move regardless. So let's just take part. Let's play a part and be part of Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan party, as big or small as we can. And you can only feel more and more connected to Prabhupada and to Krishna when you do it. There's no feeling like it. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Just one more point that I shared this a few weeks ago when we had our session when we were talking about those wanting to start something at a university. That Vaisheshika Prabhu in his book, The Family Business, he has this section saying, jump and the net will appear, right? And I can promise that if we take some type of risk for Krishna, he promises that the net will appear. And I've experienced it in my own life. So we're just humbly requesting to jump.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rashesh. So that's really cool. Thank you very much for all of that. So how should we proceed? Because I completely get, we've been going for about an hour and a half. So that may be quite some time for people. So we can end it here. Or if people want to do some Q&A, I'm going to go over to the organizers to get their steer on how you think we should proceed.
Thank you so much, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu. And for everyone who participated, really grateful. So we have a bunch of questions. So if you want to stay, that's definitely an option. But before we jump into that, I just want to just slide in something here. This entire session for me was just about building community and I see the comments here. Everyone is talking about how they feel such a sense of connection, and what Rasesha Madhav Prabhu said, Radha Bhakti said, even what Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu said, is all about this helping each other really become the best version of ourselves. And so for that, we actually have a form or sign-up form over here. And the blurb is already, it's quite self-explanatory on that form, is that we really want to facilitate this community feeling, this connection, so that we can really become, as Bhakti Tirtha Swami put it, the spiritual warriors that we are all meant to be. So I'll start off with some questions, Prabhu. Is that okay?
That's fine, but before you do, I just want to also mention Malvika's put a form in the chat window. So for those who want to connect, and I think that's really powerful, please feel free to at least check this out if you're interested. And we can really start to build momentum in moving forward. And we will be, I know for myself, I know where my strengths are. We're very, very strong in terms of content, training, development, all that kind of stuff. And there's so much that we've put together, and we're collating it. We'll be pulling that out on different platforms, just like in terms of maybe articles or other things over the next few weeks. So whatever we can share with you guys, we're more than happy to share. You guys are going to take the movement to another level, and you'll do it with style. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be adventurous. Believe me, I can feel it. I can kind of pick these things up. So watch what I'm saying. And today's what? Today is the 8th, I believe, the 8th of August. I said it today, you'll see it happen. You'll see it happen. You'll take it to another level, and you'll do it incredibly well. But we'll be able to assist you in doing that. I think Radha Bhakti, you have your hand up? No? Okay. No? Okay. So Ananda Madhav, over to you for the questions.
Thank you so much for the hype. Okay, so we got a bunch of them. I'm going to lump some in together just because they're relatively the same. So first question is this, that if we know our nature and our nature is to be a leader, how do we practically share that? My experience is sometimes when you step up, people tend to play the, oh, you're not so humble, you need to be a servant card. And when we see and then the flip side, this is another question, is when we see leaders.
In that case, I'm going to ask you to pause. Let me take it step by step, because I think there's a lot of good content and a lot of important things to say there. First of all, you're empowered to be a leader by being able to follow. Okay, so let's be very clear about how we define leadership. The best servant is the best leader. The best follower is the best leader. I'm emphasizing that on purpose, because otherwise what happens is, in the name of leadership, we may become insensitive. So there's two things. One is you have the raw talent for something, the raw nature to do something. The second is that you develop and refine that nature and you apply it properly. Okay, so going to the first part of the question, if I have a nature to lead, it means you're going to protect others. So the Kshatriya, literally one who protects others from hurt. So what that means is if I've got that leader nature, the first step forward is I'm building relationship with people. I'm making people feel secure. I'm encouraging people to be the best that they can. That's the leader. So it doesn't mean I'm telling everyone do what I say, not necessarily, okay? And the other part of that is whatever nature we have, start learning about it. I know many people in our movement who've got the nature of leaders, but it's actually, to be honest, it's a headache because it's not refined. So then they're just pushing people around or being overly domineering, or it's just like, I've got a nature to lead, you should do what I tell you. It's kind of like, dude, who are you? Like, I've never heard of you before. Like, why are you talking to me? You know? So you should identify your talent, but hone your talent. So the talent is what you're born with, but now we need to invest in it. So it goes back to what we said before. Okay, I've got the talent to do something. Now, how do I apply that properly in the situation that I'm in? Okay, so there's things that we can read on these topics. There's classes. Our movement is full of classes. Okay, so let's say you want to know about leadership. Listen to classes on leadership. Read books. Go to Bhagavatam. Read what Prabhupada says. Prabhupada in first canto and second canto of Bhagavatam has huge amounts of information about leadership. If you look under leadership, management, king, Rajrishi, leader, politician, there's an ocean of material on that. So first, develop yourself and approach it with humility. So speak to people in your community. Maybe there are more mature leaders. Okay, apprentice time. So let me find out how these mature leaders do it. I've got the nature to lead, so let me get trained by more mature leaders who I see are good at leading, so I can mature that raw talent. It's not just because I've got the nature for something, therefore I just go out and everything will be fine. It's not quite that simple, okay? It means I've got a starting point, but I want to invest in that. Okay, so that's just why I wanted to pause on that first part. I want to go to the second part of your question, Ananda Madhava.
So the second part was, what can we do when we see leaders in our temples whose nature are not suited for the leadership positions? As a junior, or if we are junior, we can't really say anything.
Okay, there's a few things. First, we should appreciate how difficult it is for that person. When someone does something that's very much a stretch from their nature, it usually causes them a lot more stress and strain. So we should feel some compassion that this person, even though it may not be their natural style, they're taking on this headache for Krishna. That's the first thing. And as we said before, by having that compassion for them, then when we are in situations where we may not be so strong or capable, we will also elicit the compassion of other people. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second is you may want to consider, can I help them? Can I compliment them, right? Is there some burden that I can take off their shoulders? You know, okay, oh, you're a leader, and you know, I can see you're also doing the social media for the temple. Maybe I can help. You know, I've got some experience in social media. Maybe that's something I can do to make your burden a little bit lighter. Another thing that we can do is we can learn what some of the challenges are when things like this happen. And these things will happen because sometimes in the earlier stages of Krishna consciousness, it was all hands on deck. We had to do the needful. Okay, so that's not bad. And sometimes even in our projects today, we may from time to time have to do that because we don't have enough human power, men and women, to cover all the things that we need to cover perfectly. Okay, so we do the best that we can. So the key word here is optimize. I see one of the biggest issues in our communities is people who are idealistic. They're floating in the clouds, right? And they don't have their feet on the ground. Okay, but we should change this. Yeah, but there's 5 people in that entire temple. And they're practically doing everything. They're doing all the cooking. They're doing all the cleaning. They're doing all the classes. It's like, but we should have financial. It's like, well, they've got 5 people. They've like got 5 people. They're doing the best that they can, right? So that's the mood to come into the whole process with, okay? So what can I do to help? Not criticizing, not they're doing the wrong thing. Let's do the best we can. And especially if you help, if you do service, if you build relationship, you build influence. Because then over time, you can actually encourage a person, you know what, I'm wondering, maybe I can take on more of this. Maybe you can train me in doing this, this, and this. You know, this transition has to take place. You guys need to take over. You guys need to take over. But I'm gonna, again, I can't. The nature of a Brahmana is to be brutally honest. And I'm gonna be brutally honest. Don't expect people to just hand you the reins, right? That's not how the real world works. Do what you can in the sphere of influence and control that you have. You develop your skills. If the seniors say, yeah, you can take the reins and it's going to be a wholesome situation, that's fine. But you've got your own projects. You don't wait for anyone, okay? Don't wait for the temples. Don't wait for GPC. Don't wait for senior devotees. Don't wait for anyone. Hone your skills now. Do your projects now. Do your TSI, do your ISKCON Montreal, your online seminars. Don't wait for anyone. Okay? You develop the skills now. And then what happens is Krishna's in control. Have that faith. He is in control. And he can just hand over the reins, remove people, put you in as and when he wants to. Okay? But the movement does not stop for anyone. Okay? It does not stop for the seniors. It does not stop for the juniors. It does not stop for even any of us on this call. This is Krishna's movement. It's Prabhupada's movement. So you take the reins and you do what you can with the time, space, and you know, the room that you have to maneuver, and just keep developing your skills in that way. You know, ISKCON, I'm going to be very honest with you. Sometimes because of people with certain mentalities, you will sometimes hear this narrative as if ISKCON is a temple. ISKCON is not the temple. ISKCON is the community of devotees. ISKCON is the people. You understand? The temples, the buildings, all these other things are like the support, you know, like the infrastructure to support. But the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is the society of devotees who are united in following Srila Prabhupada and his teachings. That's ISKCON. It's the people more than anything else. Okay, so you're ISKCON. And when you do your programs, ISKCON's moving forward. When you're training each other up, ISKCON is moving forward. When you're reaching out to other people in the universities, colleges, ISKCON is moving forward. Okay, ISKCON doesn't stop, doesn't matter what people, senior, junior are doing, it makes no difference. No one can stop you because no one can stop Krishna consciousness. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, there were a couple on natures, but all of them pretty much was on the same, like really the crux of the question was, how do we identify our nature? And there were lots of different contexts. One context was that, you know, there's so much mixing going on. Mm-hmm. How can we identify our nature? You know, other people were like, I feel like I'm good at everything, but not expert at one thing. So then how is, like, so basically that's the crux of the question. How do we identify our nature?
So like I said, I'm working on some stuff on this, which will come out within the next few weeks, but I'll just make one or two comments now. The first thing is, it's good that you're good at everything. Okay, and this is something that we will talk about more over the next few months. So what happens is this. Let's say, for example, intellectual. When you have children, you're going to also help them with their homework. So that intellectual capability is natural to everyone and everyone needs it, right? Okay, being good with finances, right? Let's say someone's got a Vaishya nature, they're good with finances, but everyone has to look after their money, okay? So there's a baseline where to be a functional human being, you need all of these qualities. You need to know how to lead, right? How to do administration and lead things. You're going to be leading a family. You need to know how to look after the intellectual side of things. You're going to be studying, right? Studying, teaching, etc. You need to know how to be good with finances to a baseline, right? It doesn't mean you have to start your own business, but baseline. And you need to know how to assist and also to do that kind of work, and also sometimes to convey something in an artistic way. So the baseline is we all need some basic capability which relate to all four varnas, right? That's the first thing. Second, yes, in Kali Yuga things are mixed, but they're not equally mixed. That's a misconception, okay? That's a misconception that people have. There'll always be one predominant nature, okay? So that's the thing you're trying to understand. Now, it gets a little bit more sensitive than that because also you can have certain skills which are coming from your nature, but you can have other capabilities which are coming from your upbringing. So let's say, for example, let's say hypothetically, that someone on this call is a Kshatriya by nature, but he grew up in a family which was very much Vaishya oriented. Okay, so he's got a Kshatriya nature, but because he grew up amongst Vaishyas, he also has some skill or capability around business, because that's what he was exposed to as he grew up, you see? So when you're trying to work these things out, there's a system. I'll just give you the basics, but I'll kind of put more out. I'll put some stuff out on Instagram on this. So what you do is, in order to understand your nature, you first of all, you discount things that you gained from your upbringing, okay? So stuff that could have come from upbringing and from exposure to people outside of you, you discount those, and then what you're left with is the stuff that's coming directly from your character. And that's how you identify nature, and you kind of, you can calibrate for the influence of the environment around you. Now, as you become very skilled, you don't even need to do that. You can just speak to people because when a person's speech pattern is actually a reflection of their thought pattern. My wife and I, we were in Germany. It was so interesting. We were at dinner. We were having prasadam. I can't remember if it was dinner or lunch. Anyway, we were speaking to this one Mataji, and she was talking, I think she'd gone to visit the park, the zoo or something like that. And she was talking about the lions, and she was talking about how majestic they are and how she felt they're such a strong, powerful creature. And I was just laughing because every other word was power, strength, dominant. I was so impressed by the way they're majestic. And I was just laughing, and we didn't even need to work anything out. What nature does she have? Someone put it in the chat window. What do you think? If a person's speech pattern is a reflection of their thought pattern, someone majestic, powerful, strong, dominant, well, yeah, she's a Kshatriya. It was just that simple, because what happens is what you notice in the environment, also what stands out to you in the environment, when you discount the situation, is to do with your value system. This is in Mahabharata. So what happens is the Pandavas, they're incognito, they're disguised as Brahmanas. They enter the palace of the king. And what happens is the king's watching them. And he thinks there's something really strange here, because all of these guys are dressed as Brahmanas. But in the palace, they go straight to the weapons, right? They see some weapons mounted on the wall, and they immediately like, oh, look, weapons. And they're going over to the weapons, they're touching the weapons, and they're kind of feeling how strong the weapons are and thinking, good quality swordsmanship, look, really weighty, you can properly use that in a battle. And the king can understand that these dudes are Kshatriyas, they're not Brahmanas, because when the Brahmanas come into the palace, they go to the books, right? They go to all the different assets around knowledge, because that's their value system, right? So when you go into any environment, what people notice in the environment relates to their value system. Now, there is a caveat here. You have to discount for the situational dynamics. What do I mean by this? Let's say that you're a Brahmana. You go into the environment, you would normally pay attention to all the different assets around knowledge, but right now you're about to be evicted, right? Because you've just lost your job, money and finances is a big issue. So even though your natural default is to notice more the things around information and knowledge, because situationally you're in a bit of a crisis, which is around money, then when you enter into the environment, that's what you notice, because I need to get a job. So I need to network. I need to see if there's any way that I could generate some profit here, because situationally, that's the primary consideration, but it's situational, not characteristic, right? So if that situational emergency wasn't there, that wouldn't be your number one focus, right? So you have to, there's some caveat. Anyway, there's a whole science around it. So it's like an algorithm. In fact, the Shastra works like an algorithm, but we'll explain that stuff over some time, because it's a big topic. Yeah, but I'm just giving you a few nuggets to think about. Does that make some sense? Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. So I think this is a good time to wrap up. Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu, I wanted to ask if there's some questions, is there a way we can send them to